Good to go.
Okay, welcome everyone to the August 27th meeting of the City of Albany's Planning, Economic Development, and Land Use Committee. I am the chair, Kathy Fahey. Other committee members, Judy Doche, Tom Hoey, Councilmember Tom Hoey. Other council members present, President Pro Tem Kelly Kimbrough, Council President Corey Ellis, Councilmember Richard Conti, and Councilmember Sonia Fredericks. And then we have council staff, Michelle Andre, John Raphael Pichardo, and Deputy Clerk Kashona Burt. And we have members of the public who are here speaking tonight, as well as the applicant. So why don't we, I think what we'll do is, well, we're here to discuss Ordinance 96120, an ordinance amending Chapter 375 of the Code of City of Albany, changing the zoning classifications and amending the zoning map accordingly. We'll also be discussing resolution number 728120R, a resolution regarding the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It's the SEQRA, and that's a review of Ordinance 96120. We're going to begin the evening with public comment, and I just want to remind folks that all the written public comment has been emailed to the council, the full council. So JR, if you could introduce our first speaker, please.
Michelle, you have the list of it?
Oh, Michelle, excuse me. And if the speaker could give their name and address, please.
Jeff, I believe Baker, it's one of the attorneys for two of the residents. If he would like to speak on the record.
Okay, welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I really wasn't planning on speaking. I've submitted the written comments and I appreciate you taking those into account. As we set forward in the comments, you know, at the stage of what you are, and unless I've missed something, what you have on the website is a blank SEQRA resolution. So I'm not sure what you're planning on doing with that or your process of going forward. But I think given the magnitude of this project, to the extent you're going to be recommending anything, it clearly has to be a positive declaration. As I pointed out in my letter, and again, if I'm missing something, I apologize. I'm recently been retained, but the reference shadow study in the EAF doesn't seem to actually exist. It certainly isn't on the city's website, so it's not available for the public to review, which at a bare minimum requires you can't take any action so that people have a chance to review it. I don't know if you've seen it. It was fairly odd in the FEAF that the applicant goes through and discusses the various elements of potential areas of impacts and gives a brief summary of what they believe the impacts will be or won't be. In regards to the shadow study, it says nothing. It literally says nothing. It says, see the shadow study, which doesn't seem to exist, which, you know, as I said in my letter, you don't have to be a rocket science. There's nothing bigger of a red flag of a potential impact than leaving something like that out. So my clients have sent in their letters. I know you have a petition, you've had comments from the neighborhood. This is a significant project that requires a careful review, and it requires a careful review that an environmental impact statement will give you that allows the community not only to be involved, but to consider the alternatives. It doesn't simply have to be the project as proposed. It can be different. It's proposed as some kind of a planned mixed-use development, but an alternatives analysis will allow you to look at different things of different scales and assure that there actually will be affordable housing in the mix, because I'm not sure there are sufficient assurances in your legislation for the zone change, which assures that it'll have a mix of affordable housing. So thank you for your time. I talked too long for saying I wasn't planning on speaking, and thank you for considering my comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff.
Jeff, will any of your clients be speaking? Because I believe they're in the waiting room. They're in the room.
It's up to them. I don't know if they're planning. I think they submitted written comments, and you know, it's their choice if they want to add anything. I'm not sure.
Michelle, can you check?
Dunbrook?
Hello, Deborah. Is Deborah unmuted here?
She's unmuted.
Okay. Do you wish to speak to the council, to the committee tonight, Deborah? Okay. Oh, she said no, thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone else, Michelle?
No. There's no one else. No.
Okay, I'm just.
That I'm looking at, no.
Okay, so looking at the agenda, I think we should start with the zone change, and John Raphael, you prepared a memo regarding the zone change, but I also wanted people to look at the procedure for amending the zoning map. And I think Michelle had sent that out late. And
which page would you
my request? That was that page 260. So I was wondering, I think it's important that we take a look at that.
Okay.
So you'll see that little, the little boxes over to the right. It indicates, the way it's set up, it indicates that the Common Council does the review and the decision later in the process. So I wasn't able to get a hold of planning staff to confirm this, but according to this, I know that planning board the application has just been submitted to the planning board. I think it was in June, and they met on it Tuesday night. So I'm not sure that we can go ahead and make a decision before we get a recommendation from the planning board.
We already did get a planning board decision. It was filed this July 27th of 2020, and it's been submitted to the Common Council.
And that was, do you have that, JR?
Yes, I sent it around just not too long ago. I submitted it also with the link earlier this week. It's been submitted before. That was the determination from the zoning map amendment.
And they said, and what was the decision on that?
Favorable recommendation.
Oh, okay. Gee. All right. So then could you put up the next page of the
Kathy?
Michelle, if you could put up page 260.
Kathy?
261.
Can I speak with regard to the planning board recommendation? Because I think it's important that you know that there is advisory notes that go along with that.
Okay, go ahead, Judy.
So the recommendation is favorable with advisory notes. And it says the planning board suggests that the Common Council consider the following items when reviewing the proposed zoning map amendment. And there's 4 items. And the first one is consideration should be given to removing the portions of the proposed zoning map amendment that front on 2nd Avenue to limit the visual impacts on adjacent properties. Number 2 is efforts should be taken to ensure that all existing residents that choose to remain in their homes can do so without being negatively impacted. 3, analysis of the map amendment must consider, quote, the full breadth of the potential build out scenarios including but not limited to the 76 project, I think, which is basically saying, once you make the zoning map amendment, there could be any kind of development that would be, could go in there then that meets the mixed use campus institutional. So we should be aware of the fact that while we might really like aspects of this particular project, there could be other projects that would be eligible to go in there essentially as a matter of right. And the fourth one is to avoid the perception of spot zoning. A clear articulation should be made of the unique circumstances that make this site location and rezoning appropriate as distinguished from other sites that may exhibit similar features and conditions.
Okay.
And I'm not exactly sure.
All right, so that, JR, I know you addressed some of these things in your memo, so that makes sense. I don't know how I missed that decision. Okay. And also that was, you know, one of the most important concerns they raised is that if this project, for whatever reason, didn't go through and the zoning, we did do a zoning amendment, there are a host of different, it does completely change what can go, what also can go into this area. And that's something important to consider. Could be hospitals, could be all, you know, a variety of different types of development. So as we talk about this, I think people need to keep that in mind. So JR, why don't we turn it over to you for now, and you can talk a little bit about your, go through the criteria that we're supposed, the general standards, review standards with regards to this zone change proposal.
So you're the USDO standards or the SEQRA, just both?
I think that, let's start with, start with the review standards and before we get to the SEQRA. Okay. I'm also going to allow Stephanie to join in on this, as she's, they have presented a lot on this. Mm-hmm.
Stephanie, they've presented on this in various days that we've had the presentation to go with me on the standards. And as the Common Council is aware, the standards are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then A and B again, because particular consideration has to be given to zoning maps. So A is consistent with the comprehensive plan, Albany 2030 plan. B, conflicts with any other provision of the USDO and the code of the city of Albany. C is required by change conditions. D, addresses a demonstrated community need, would improve compatibility, excuse me, real would improve compatibility among uses and would ensure efficient development within the city. F, would result in a logical and orderly development pattern. G, would avoid significant adverse impacts on the natural environment, including but not limited to water, air, noise, storm water management, wildlife, vegetation, wetlands, and the natural functioning of the environment. And then the subsection 2 with A and B is compatible with existing and proposed uses surrounding the subject land and is the appropriate zoning district for the land. And B, would result in the development that is adequately served by public facilities, for example, streets, potable water, sewage, stormwater management, solid waste collection, and disposal, school, parks, police, fire, and emergency medical facilities. So with A, the first portion is the 2030 plan. In review of the 2030 plan, the applicant did propose what is consistent with the 2030 plan, as I'm sure that a lot of the Common Council members who have been here and also have reviewed the comprehensive plan that was submitted back in 2012, I believe. It's very thorough in what Albany should look 10 years from now. The 6 components being safe, livable neighborhoods, model education system, vibrant urban center, multimodal transportation hub, a green city, and a prosperous economy. And then my recommendation is on this plan, this portion is that the zoning map amendment proposed is consistent with the comprehensive plan as presentations from the developer and just with research in it. The triple net, that there's underdevelopment in the South End area. This will provide quality, affordable housing, bringing more jobs to the area, utilizing triple net zero design, a new bus line that CDT has said that will be placed in the area, more educational advancement opportunities, bring services to the area that is currently not available, such as more retail, which include a market, grocery store, restaurant, cafe, neighborhood services such as a bank, medical, dental, urgent care, barbershop, salon, dry cleaning, therapy, cultural education, a STEM center of excellence, daycare, aquaponics garden, and amenities such as a co-working space, greenhouse, fitness center, and pool. That's subsection A. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
So the comprehensive plan talks about there being, neighborhoods, recognizing neighborhoods, wanting to encourage home ownership throughout the city. One of the things that it talks about is making recommendations for the way that you would make determinations about how large structures would be, and specifically about the height, and engaging neighborhoods in those kind of dialogues when you're making those kinds of determinations. So I'm, based upon some of the public comment that we've received, I'm wondering how this is compatible with that, and also with the concept of essentially having stepped up kind of development, that you don't all of a sudden plop something in the middle, a large structure in, on a particular lot. Normally you would see, you go from mixed, residential to mixed use neighborhood edge, then to a commercial district, then to, an urban district, et cetera. So while those terminologies, those categories were not specifically spelled out in the comprehensive plan, that concept was spelled out. And I'm wondering how this is consistent with that aspect of the comprehensive plan, and especially the engagement of communities when you are making determinations with regard to what heights are appropriate for development.
May I address that issue?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, please go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you. So one of the developments, as we were preparing for this meeting, one of the developments that I learned of today, which I hadn't known prior to the preparation for this evening's meeting, is that the architect who designed this program did so specifically with the 2007 Segway plan, which is incorporated into your comprehensive plan. That Segway plan articulated specific requirements for that the city of Albany wanted to see in the development of the South End. And as part of that, the architect took those goals that were articulated, including such things as safe neighborhoods, creating sustainable development, having affordable housing, providing retail, providing services, and having walkable neighborhoods. They took all of those criteria from the 2007 Segway plan and incorporated those into the development and the design here. If you remember, in our presentation on July 9th, we talked about the need for density, and that projects, that the city of Albany has been seeking private development and private investment in the South End since 2007. That you're actually engaging now in a process that is continuing that need for development in the South End, because nothing came out of the 2007 Segway plan. So you're investing more money in having more plans that are seeking the exact same development that you articulated previously and that we have designed to. In my presentation on July 9th, I talked about the need for density and height in order to afford a project that is as ambitious as the 76. So while it may seem like it's dropping into the center of a neighborhood, when you walked that neighborhood with us on August 13th, you saw what was there. That neighborhood is in desperate need of investment. And this new investment will spark investment in the future. And I do think you're going to get that step down development. There are vacant properties that surround this site that could be the site for stepped up development. But that singular development on one lot where somebody's building a 2 or 3 story townhome, that hasn't occurred in 13 years since you've articulated that need. So you need something that is going to spur that development, and we believe that's this project.
Mm-hmm. Kathy, we have Derek Johnson's hand up.
All right, Derek, go ahead, please. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Judy, did you want to respond to that? Did you have anything, a follow-up?
Well, yeah, so I am not disputing that this addresses a demonstrated community need. And I really like this project. That's a different criteria, though, in amongst the criteria that we need to measure this, up against. And I think what I heard in response was were arguments that essentially would say this particular development should be able to be placed pretty much any place within the South End neighborhood. Because those arguments that were made are arguments for any place in the South End neighborhood. When I hear what was said, about the South End, and I really want to see development, I mostly think in terms of Morton Avenue, Lower Morton Avenue, and South Pearl, and other areas that are currently zoned for commercial uses. I can envision along 2nd Avenue creating some commercial uses, but I would anticipate it in terms of a logical and orderly flow from a residential district going to something like MUNC, as opposed to going to something, campus institutional. So that's my concern, is that we heard an argument for essentially any place in the South End we can place a development like this. And indeed, maybe that's what some people think is orderly development. I have questions about that. I have concerns about that.
I think your standard says it needs to be consistent with the Albany 2030 comprehensive plan. My sense is that that doesn't mean that we have to match each and every of the 300-page document. And so I don't know that the city of Albany has ever seen a project that has hit all 6 of your articulated goals. They're probably page 324 or page 169 that maybe we don't meet and satisfy 100%, but we literally hit every single of the 6 highlighted goals. I'm not sure how we could be more consistent.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie and Judy. Derek?
Yes, well, I agree with the last speaker. I've been close to this project, and generally where you see the hiccups come in is from the plan and not using a small amount of people's opposition. We've had a number of community meetings regarding this, and the physical meeting that I was at the opposition to the project was very minimum. It was literally a handful of people. And my concern is that the smaller voice seems to outweigh the larger voice. We have no debate that development is needed in the South End. I'm gonna back up what Councilman Robinson said when we were talking about New Scotland. We welcome development in neighborhoods. If you walk through our neighborhoods need new life. And as a resident and as a city elected official, I would like to see this process not be so barren on people that come into our city to do business. And we should be celebrating that it's people from our community that is presenting this and trying to be a part of the new change that's coming to the South End. So I feel like we're putting a lot of emphasis and we're talking about a smaller portion of the conversation and not focusing on the excitement that this project is bringing to our community. You know, the ideal of having a health clinic, of having a bank, of having a barbershop in that area, it just makes people smile. Having a restaurant in walking distance is making people smile. So I would hope that the immediate community, the larger portion that is in support of this, fully in support of it, would be taken in just as much consideration.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Could somebody respond to, I mean, you brought up the number of public meetings. How many meetings have you had where the community has been invited to hear about the project? I know you've probably mentioned this before, but if you could
we've
talk about that.
We've had 3 community meetings, which is more engagement than is typically required for a zoning amendment. We had 2 that we held where the notification was predominantly electronic. Then we held one where we sent out postcards, as is required by the city, for the district plan, which we later withdrew. So we mailed notices to everyone of the meeting. And then on August 13th, we had a walkthrough of the site where the public was also put on notice of the meeting. So there have been 4 separate engagements with the community on this particular plan.
And how were they notified for the walkthrough?
The walkthrough, JR noticed that. I'm not sure what the city's policy is. I don't know if that was it publication?
We noticed the meeting for the August 13th, as we would generally notice all meetings of the Common Council.
And the one where there was a mailed notice, and who did that go to?
That went to everybody within 250 feet of the project site.
And how was the turnout for that meeting?
You know, we've had, I can't remember on that particular one how many we had. The first meeting, there were, I think, 88 participants. And I would ask anybody else, Kelsey, do you remember how many were on the?
Approximately.
It was over 70 on the second one as well.
Can I ask a question, Chair? Madam
Yes.
Chair? When did we start asking numbers of public meetings? Because it's a whole bunch of meetings that go on that no one is ever there about stuff that the community doesn't want. And we never ask that question.
You know what, Derek? I can ask that question.
No, I'm just, and I can ask this question, and I don't think that I asked any question inappropriate. So you're free to ask questions, and I'm just asking you as the chair, and as a person that is displaying some type of problem with the project. So I'm just asking, when did we start asking those type of questions, Kathy? And it's a fair question.
I think from time to time we've asked that question. Maybe not every time, but this is a very big project. We want to make sure that
it is a big project, and it's a project that's needed, and and it's a project that the people that are directly connected to that area are in support of, and it just looks.
Can I think, Kathy, you asked that question partially because of the point I was making about the comprehensive plan anticipating neighborhood involvement in decisions with regard to.
And I think I responded to that when I pointed out that we had multiple meetings, and then it's like it's another question coming back about how many people are there. And that just doesn't, it just looks like it's intentional. And I just wanted to point that out.
Let me put it right out there, Derek. I like this project. I hope it, I hope that it goes through. But
well, Kathy, it doesn't sound like it. It doesn't sound like that. And this is a public meeting, and we are people who are going to be the mouthpiece for this.
Derek?
And I'm just putting that out there.
I think because it is such a large project that we want to make sure we cover all the bases on this, okay? And
Derek, I would just like to say that with regard to my focus on this, I have a certain amount of frustration with the city not applying the standards as written in the USDO when making decisions. So one of the things I'm doing is looking at these standards and asking those kinds of questions. And having looked at it from the standpoint of, well, we just went through a rezoning 3 years ago, and we made a determination then what was the appropriate zoning for this particular location. We are supposed to be, when we're making changes, we're supposed to say, here's what has changed with regard to this particular parcel, as we did with the rezoning amendment that we just did in Sheridan Hollow. And we spelled out, what were the findings. And in that case, the owner had died. It's adjoining property that was already zoned in that way and made intrinsic sense. It's more difficult to apply the standards that are written in our USDO to this particular project and yield a yes on a clear yes on every single point. And so I'm just saying, I'm looking, I like the project. There is a part of me that feels like it's maybe just not quite in the right location.
Not going anywhere else.
but can I say something, Kathy? Like you talking about Judy, yeah. You made the point about the USDO, right? But our community had very limited involvement. Now, if I was to go back and say how many people were present at that meeting from our community, it might have been 2. And that's an important document that we are using to, either say yay or nay to the community. So that's what I mean when I say about the attendance piece, because in crucial parts, sometimes there's no representation from the community, and the business still goes forward. So that's the point that I was making.
Derek, your point is well taken. I think we should move on. Where are we with the going through the review standards?
So next would be B, conflicts with any other provisions of the USDO and the Code of the City of Albany.
Okay.
According to the developer, there is 2 incompatibilities with the dimensional standards of the MUCI zoning district, which would arise in phase 2 of the in the development, which is the maximum impervious lot coverage, which is required of 60%, but the project is doing 62%. And then the maximum front back setback is required to be 20 feet, whereas the proposed is 25 feet. This allows, their argument is that the variance is a maximum impervious lot coverage falls below the 10% allowable administrative adjustment. The project is otherwise design compliant with the USDO and City of Albany code. I have just, in collaboration with the planning department staff, there came to me there's 2 things. One, that this would be subject to a area variance for the BZA to determine, and that otherwise it is compatible, and that other parts of the project will require conditional use permit approval, which is separate from this part of the project, part of the portion in the development. And third, that I believe, and Stephanie, if you can answer this one, because I believe this is a follow-up question I have for you. I believe there's an issue with the topography when it comes to the impervious lot coverage as well, and the setback.
Yeah, Kelsey, do you want to address that? You can unmute yourself.
I mean, just in general, the topography of the site really limits what can be built there. There's over 50 feet of grade change from 2nd Avenue down to Seymour. And so that's why we've strategically oriented the buildings to be parallel with the contours of the topography and to build them into that slope. In addition, that plays into the height of the buildings, which will be stepped down as the topography steps down as well. I guess I'm not sure what else you want.
And I just want to, and following up with that, one of the recommendations, the advisory notes that came from the planning board recommendation was particularly, one of them was about the setback, as in a conversation I had with Zach Powell and Brad with regards to the 2nd Avenue portion in regards to keeping it as a mixed use or doing it as a mixed use neighborhood edge. And I talk about this further in my memo in regards to that advisory note, is that it's actually is confusing and incompatible because the zoning that they're trying to do for mixed use campus institutional allows for a buildup of up to 8 stories, but they're not doing on 2nd Avenue. But with the mixed use neighborhood edge on that portion of 2nd Avenue would actually cause a conflict because the allowage of height of a story, it only allows 3 stories in mixed use neighborhood edge on that portion. So then automatically this project would then become incompatible with the USDO if we were to rezone it on that portion. So the only way that they could is that mixed use neighborhood campus institutional and the topography that resolves the conflict, and that an area variance would be the remedy in that portion.
Yeah, and just to expand on that a little bit further, the building A that we're proposing along 2nd Avenue, we are specifically targeting to get an area variance for the front setback in order to set it back from that front property line. So where we've placed the building, it will actually be slightly behind the adjacent rectory and church buildings and behind the adjacent residential structures in order to limit the effect of the height on those adjacent properties.
So in essence, we've designed around the thing that the planning board has asked us to do. And when we were having the planning board meeting, there was kind of an interesting discussion where I said to Zach, like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even understand what this first criteria meant. And there was an interplay between the two of us. And basically he was like, yeah, you're right. But they carried it through on their document, which had been drafted prior to the meeting. So I think they understood our arguments, that they required us to set the building back. We did set it back so that it wouldn't have the impact that they were again then making a recommendation about. So
okay, thank you. Comments from council members, committee members first.
Looks like Judy has her hand up. Yep.
Thank you. I mean, it's kind of interesting that we're saying we would be reaching the conclusion that this does not conflict with other provisions of the USDO, but it requires a variance. But the other thing I'm wondering about is one of the commenters basically said that this rezoning would not allow for a singular 2-family detached dwelling that will continue to exist in this location. So when we are looking at whether this conflicts with any provisions of the USDO, you know, when we wrote the USDO, part of the goal was to bring more properties into compliance with the USDO. And so it seems now we would be having one of these properties be out of compliance, 1 or 2 of these properties be out of compliance after we do the rezoning. So that does adversely impact the owners the other properties. And also then I think, I mean,
I'm not sure where you get that it adversely impacts them. They're allowed to keep their house. It's a pre-existing non-conforming use. It doesn't change their use whatsoever. It actually it increases the value of those houses because commercial properties generally sell for a greater price than a residential. So if somebody were to acquire their property, they would get it at a higher rate in the future, but they can absolutely remain in their premises. It's a pre-existing non-conforming uses. Those are legal in New York State.
And furthermore, the process of the BZA, the point of the BZA is to take into the consideration of these topographical issues that we can't predict when it comes to creating the zoning, the USDO and other zoning districts. So this is where it would perfectly fit under for BZA consideration.
Okay, any other comments by council members on this this item?
Yes.
Cool. Corey?
I have my hand up. Well, I did.
Oh, I apologize. I do know how to use this.
We talk about the USDO and when it was crafted. I'm pretty sure the USDO did not take in consideration when you're looking at the South End in this neighborhood. The median income is about $20,000. So it's kind of disingenuous to think we're going to be creating single family homes on these small lots, and people are going to come in from the outside and do this to help a neighborhood. That's not happening. It's not going to happen. If it happened, it would have happened already by now. You need something to be the generator of excitement, the generator of people coming in to look at the South End, re-examine the South End. Also, you need something to generate that the city understands what needs to happen when development in these most challenged neighborhoods and how we go about and make sure it happens. So when we looked at this, and that was when we went there as a group, they had shown us what it would look like, how the building would be set back away from the walkway, and how it would come into view with the other houses. So that's already been looked at. Also, we also have to realize that our planning board directed these developers to this zoning use based off of their project. So this is not something they came in and did on their own. This was something the planning board had suggested. So when we look at these projects, but when we look at the USDO, once again, when the zones were crafted, I'm pretty sure they did not take into consideration the median income of these neighborhoods, because if that was the case, when you look at just a block down from where this is going, a block down, we have 15 vacant and abandoned buildings. 15. They've been there forever. No one's coming in here going to be putting up one in single family homes unless there's a major project with a major investment that can begin to galvanize development in that community. So we need to continue to realize that a project like this is going to send a message. It's going to send a message that the South End, the city of Albany, the city council members in this city understand we need to do something big, bold, and exciting to create a jolt in that neighborhood. And as to Stephanie's point, commercial development, any type, is going to enhance people's properties. So I don't see an adverse effect to these property owners at all on this project.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Anyone else before we move on? Judy?
Yeah, so I just want to say, in terms of what we're doing in terms of, again, the whole idea of zoning and a zoning map being a planning document and saying, here's what our intention is, it seems to me as though the argument should then be made that we shouldn't only zone this particular lot, but maybe all of the lots going down to Pearl Street in this part of the South End, and approve it as a commercial or mixed-use commercial district, neighborhood center or whatever. And my argument isn't in favor of it. It's not saying it's disingenuous. I mean, you know, to say that it's disingenuous that I think that there's going to be single family homes developed in this location. No, that's not my expectation. I'm looking at the fact that when we zone things, there's not only an interest in promoting development, but also protecting, recognizing that people buy properties with a certain expectation about what will or will not be built next to them. So this is a significant change for some people. And I think that we need to, you know, be recognizing that. But again, if, you know, and zoning is supposed to be about compatible development, and some of these criteria talk about that. You know, why aren't we looking at zoning more of 2nd Avenue right down to Pearl Street for campus institutional or neighborhood center if we want to create a commercial district there?
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next criteria, please. JR.
Yes, so the next criteria C is required by change conditions. The developer has made several arguments as to that the zoning, the current zoning is insufficient to spur development, as it's already been discussed already. My recommendation is that it is needed by for the change conditions as stated by the developer. The mixed-use campus institutional allows for the construction of buildings as proposed by the developer. It also brings more, in addition to residential, it brings more community, commercial, professional, and cultural facilities, expanding the use of the area.
Okay, anybody want to comment on that? John, are you out there? Okay, he's not. Judy, go ahead.
So this criteria is saying there has been a change in circumstances since we adopted the USDO 3 years ago. That is what is required by this. So, JR, what specifically has changed with regard to these particular parcels in the last 3 years since we did the rezone? And I want to note that if the answer is, oh, well, we have a developer, then this criteria would apply to anybody who proposes any development, any place that we now have somebody who wants to, you know, develop, you know, these particular parcels. That seems to me to be the only real change from the facts and circumstances that existed 3 years ago. So JR, correct me.
So from what has been there, and as you saw on the site visit, the RT district that's in there right now, residential townhouses, it's required change because in order to increase development, as has been argued previously, and this is just my advisal, I don't make the decision, that it brings more incentive, and also the situation of the housings that are there that are abandoned and vacant, without the change, there's a change in condition because there is more blight. And as the mayor has even stated, that blight is plaguing our city, and particularly the South End. I won't go more into that. I think Mr. Johnson had something to say as he lives right in that ward.
Yes. I think the change is, once again, we're hearing directly from the community. When the USDO was being created and the zoning changes were being thought of, it was minimal participation from the community. And this one, you got a double whammy because, once again, not only are the residents speaking, but also one of the both of the developers are from the community. And so, like, you know, I understand that we want to have consistency, but also the South End is in dire need of a fresh breath of air. And I would just hope that this council can be respectful of the thought and the process that was put into this, the thought and the planning that was put into this process to have as minimal of an effect as they can, because they're building in. They've taken every step that they could to not be intrusive on the current neighborhood. So once again, I just would like it to be known that in the future, you know, it's funny that the USDO came out right when they knew that that we were going to do redevelopment in the South End. So it's almost like, you know, they came out with some expectations that they had minimum community input, and now we're having projects that are generating community input and we're disregarding it.
I just want to say that you just made an excellent argument that we really should have done a 6-month review and an annual review of the USDO.
I think people have said that. I think that was said many, many, many times. And, you know, like we're seeing people use the USDO for their argument against something and then go against it and when they want to. So it's a lot of problems, it sounds like, with the USDO, and hopefully we'll work together to get those addressed.
Hi, Kathy, can I just respond? Oh, working on the audio.
I'm sorry, I had to put my headphones on, so.
Yeah, if I could, you know, on behalf of SED respond to, you know, I think twice now a statement's been made to the effect that what is, you know, why is this site different? Why would it rezone here not set the precedent to rezone any other, you know, parcel? And I would argue that if you go through our development with detail, this is a very unique site. This site is along 2nd Ave with tremendous public transportation, some of the best, most innovative public transportation once CDDA finishes their work in the Capital District, which is a criteria for our project. The park to the south that we're going to invest in as part of this project is a critical green space that's part of this. This is going to be the most sustainable development ever built in New York State. If you get in an aerial map, there's great green space on the former landfill and behind the school that is integral to what this project wants to be. The school itself is important to this project. We are going to partner with the charter school on the STEM education, allowing the kids to walk up the hill and see some innovative agriculture and aquaponics concepts that you don't see anywhere else in the city. So I would argue that it's the opposite of a situation where this could take place anywhere. This site is 2 local developers who grew up here. They know the site, which is how they ended up with this land. And it is the perfect storm to create a really groundbreaking development for the city of Albany. So I certainly would say that not only can this not be applied anywhere else, it can only be applied here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
The other issue is that zoning is aspirational. It's not meant to be omniscient. Zoning is a plan for the future. And when something beautiful, when a unicorn shows up, you welcome it. And that's why you have the amendment provisions within your USDO, because you know it's not a perfect document. And so you prepare criteria to allow people to change those things that you couldn't possibly have envisioned 3 years ago.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Let's see here. Anybody else on that issue? Otherwise, JR, let's move forward. I don't see any other hands. To the next issue.
Okay, the next portion is D, addresses a community need. And as the developers argued in their full environmental assessment form, one of the criteria is that, again, it goes back to the comprehensive plan. But in addition to that, the demonstrated community need is immediate employment opportunities, 2, increases in property value, 3, retaining residents who otherwise choose not to remain in the South End, 4, quality affordable housing, and 5, reducing vacant aging residential building and a cycle of decay and abandonment. My recommendation is that the rationale of the developer is sound and acceptable.
Okay, any comments on that? All right, let's move forward with the next criteria.
I just want to say I completely agree with that, you know, particular point.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Thank you.
I think Tom had something.
Tom, go ahead, Tom. Oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry. JR, I got to switch over to my phone off my computer. So I'm going to jump out of here and just, can you let me back in on my iPhone?
Sure, definitely.
Thank you.
I guess, should I wait for Tom to come back in or?
I don't know if he wanted to speak on this or what.
We probably would need to for quorum.
Yeah, for quorum purposes.
He's here.
Yep. There we go.
No, I meant, did he want to speak with regards to this criteria that we're talking about?
Tom, do you have anything? I know he just jumped in.
No, I'm in very much support of this project, so I want to make sure I stay with it. Thank you.
Okay, JR, let's move forward here.
So E, the next criteria is E, would improve compatibility among uses and would ensure efficient development within the city. So just, to summarize what the developer has argued in their application, this would allow for development of an entirely new community within the South End. The design of the structures and integration of mixed uses to support residential component were purposeful. The proposal integrates new design and planning standards that promote less reliance on automobile ownership together with green standards, which have little impacts on the city's aging infrastructure. The triple net zero, which would have minimal impact on the city's utilities, sewers, electrical, including employment opportunities, essential services, bringing in essential services, healthcare, retail, and banking. They provide safe access through South End to Krank Park and the charter school. And the compatibility going into the modular component, which would allow for efficient and quick development, significantly reducing the amount of time that the project impacts adjoining neighbors. And that's basically, to sum it up. Again, they re-emphasized the 2007 SEG plan. My recommendation was that it was sound and acceptable.
Okay, any comments from council members?
Yes, I'd just like to comment on the modular part of that. Modular is going to be, I believe, a new wave of how we're going to be developing and building structures. I look at this as an opportunity. Why? We build a building like this that's never been built in the United States before in the South End, and it's modular. Now what we're looking at is we're going to be looking at other developers who do modular. They're going to be looking at how we did it here, but also it possibly can create an opportunity, and this is what the opportunity. What if Albany is the place where we build a modular factory, where we're building it here? And this type of development starts that conversation and starts that vision. Modular I think is going to be, it's already being looked at and used in other places. So, and when we look at this project from an environmental standpoint, the reuses of the water and things of that nature, now we got a modular building in our city. And now we can start looking at, well, why wouldn't we want the modulars built here in our city? And I think that is a vision that we should all be, that I know I'm going to be looking at as far as how to create more jobs. Because if buildings, they can be built more efficiently and quicker with modular. So if we're looking at this project being a modular project, I don't know where these developers are getting, where they have to transport that in from. But imagine if they didn't have to transport it in and it was a factory right here in Albany. So I look at this as an example of what we can do and where we're going to be going.
Thank you, Corey. Any other comments?
Sonia does.
Sonia.
Yeah, I want to comment on this and really give credit to the developers with the concept of triple net zero. To President Ellis's point, this is the first development in the nation that would have zero waste, zero water. Knew I was going to forget a third because it's just so many. But I will say, I think it's quite outstanding that they're putting that much emphasis on making sure that they're going green with this development. And the other comment on this one is the amount of businesses that they're proposing, such as a bank, STEM research center, daycare, are really hitting on multiple facets of what we need in this community. And I'll even say with the part of the daycare, when we did the walkthrough, I was speaking to representatives from the school, and they were saying how excited parents and teachers were to be able to have that option so close to their location.
Okay, thank you, Sonia. Jared, let's move forward.
Okay. F is would result in logical and orderly development patterns. So going through, I'm going to bypass on what the developer argued in their plan as it's been written there, but my recommendation was sound and acceptable. And as on the site visit on August 13, 2020, it was explained that the height of the building would not be taller than surrounding buildings. In fact, the church at the northeast corner would remain the tallest structure in the area, therefore maintaining a logical and orderly development in the area. Furthermore, I'm pulling up the zoning map now from on our city website, MapGeo. As you will see, this is the zoning map right here as it currently stands at this point. I have to zoom out so I can show you what I was saying was sound and acceptable on this. The rest of the areas is mostly mixed use neighborhood edge, residential townhome 1M, land conservation, more mixed use neighborhood edge. If you zoom out just a little bit more, mixed use campus institutional is right here. The next stance on it. This right here is actually Empire State Plaza. That's the closest mixed-use campus institutional next area. The other one in mixed-use campus institutional is over here. It's actually empty here. It's Kenwood Commons LLC, and it's mainly small areas here. So this would keep, on top of that, would keep in the scheme of the zoning map as well, as while this would be a little spot of mixed-use campus institutional, most of the campus institutional has either been government or smaller development, and this would result in a larger development.
Okay, thank you. Any comments?
May I talk, Kathy?
Sure, go ahead, please.
So, you know, this is where I think the planning board, it's interesting that the planning board says favorable with advisory notes. And then they're talking about we must consider the full breadth of the potential build out scenarios. It's not just this development, it could be anything like that. And when you look at a logical and orderly development pattern, what we had talked about when we were talking about the USDO, it was the concept of there being stepped up kinds of development. So we're going from mixed use neighborhood edge. Usually the next step would be mixed use neighborhood center, where you might, with a variance and using the affordable housing incentive, go from the allowed 3.5 stories to 5.5 stories, which gets you close to what they're looking for here. But that also then has, I think, some more appropriate limitations with regard to, if this does not go forward, what would be an allowable development in this particular location. So, you know, what are the potentialities? You know, I would be very comfortable with this being an MUNC change, and that would accomplish a lot of what they are accomplishing there. One of the things that happens, that has been happening in the city, is that it used to be that there was some give and take between the city and what the developers wanted in terms of what then is a logical flow and improvement in a particular area, and usually, you know, there would be some adjustment and modification as opposed to approving things that other people might think is really too large for the area. You know, so Tom Hoey has seen this in his neighborhood. I've seen it in my ward, and it's a, you know, I'm not convinced that this is really the appropriate zoning for this particular location in this particular project in terms of a logical and orderly development pattern. We like this project, so we want to get to yes, but in terms of what else might go there if this project does not go forward once we've approved, you know, the land. I mean, frankly, we could approve this and then somebody else could come in with an entirely different project. You know, it could be sold, you know, the property could be sold and somebody could come in, you know, with an entirely different project that wouldn't have all of the community benefits that this particular project has. So that's,
we went.
I have serious questions about this.
Stephanie, could you comment on that? Why does the building need to be 8 stories?
Yep, absolutely.
And I also I don't want to forget this. One of the issues that was raised, has there been a shadow study done? I don't know that I've seen that.
Yeah, the shadow study was done and submitted in July. Why the planning department did not put that in their uploaded documents, I have no idea. It was part of a public meeting that we had with the planning board where we went through slide by slide how the shadow impacted. So it's been done. I think it's just a planning department snafu. And to Judy's comment about, you know, we like this project, we're not sure if this is the right zoning. It's actually your planning department that pushed us in the direction of this particular zone. So it wasn't something where we came in, we were like, hey, this is what we wanna, this is the zone we wanna create. We actually came in with the project and said, can this fit? Does this fit? This is what we wanna do. And they worked with us to hone this project and to find the specific zone that we later proposed. There are probably others that would have made things somewhat easier for us, but this is the one that they recommended and we followed through with. In our July 9th meeting, and I don't know, Kelsey, if you want to bring up those slides, we actually compared all of the uses. And so what we did was we took all of the uses that are allowed in Neighborhood Edge and we compared them to those in the area that we're proposing. And we talked you through all of this. We had, you know, 4 or 5 slides. And what we found was that any of those uses that seemed like, ooh, maybe that wouldn't fit in this community, couldn't actually occur on the site. So a parking structure couldn't go on the site because the parking structure has to be a supportive structure to something else. And there just isn't enough land to do that. Would a drive-through work on this site? It probably wouldn't because of the topography. Your planning department would reject it when it went through the development plan process. So we went through that in painstaking detail in order to provide you with the contrast so that if the 76 didn't actually occur, you would know what uses could be put there. Is anybody going to put a stadium on this particular site? No way. There's no way. You would have to excavate so much land just to make it even. It just wouldn't happen. And we took you through all of those in probably an hour-and-a-half presentation. We can pull those slides back up if you'd like us to, but we've been through this.
Okay, any other comments? JR, let's move on, please. Oh, and I want to point out that council member and committee member Joyce Love is here. Welcome, Joyce.
Do you want Kelsey to show the shadow study portion that was presented before, just as a refresher?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
One moment, let me just pull it up.
And I just have to say, I've actually seen the shadow study myself. I'm surprised at what I was just looking up on the self-development website that the planning department has, and I don't know why it's not there.
So are you guys seeing it yet?
Nope. Oh,
now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So similar to what a typical shadow study would include, we evaluated the 4 typical seasons. And so this first one is the spring equinox. And I can zoom in a little bit, but basically this shows obviously the full development in the event that building A could be the full length of the frontage of 2nd Avenue, but that area would be reduced to half if 84 and 86 2nd Ave are not acquired. So looking at this in the 8 a.m., the shadow is reflecting into the vegetated buffer along Leonard. This is actually Joaquin's mother's home where he grew up. And then these are commercial uses in the mixed use neighborhood edge zone in this area. At the 12 p.m. time frame, the shadow actually reflects completely within the 2nd Avenue right of way. And then for building B, you can't tell very much, but it would reflect into the yard of the 84 and 86 2nd Ave properties as they currently exist. And then by 6 p.m., the sun is already setting. This is the summer solstice. The shadows don't extend as far during this, but again, a little bit into the adjacent properties on Leonard, not too far at all during the noon time. And then the 6 p.m. is where you do get some shadow, but it's a very short duration in that time frame. And then the next one is the autumn equinox. This is kind of similar to spring with similar projections on Leonard, as well as 2nd Avenue within the right of way. And then by 6 p.m., the sun's already setting. And then this is the winter solstice. And this is, again, the winter, obviously, you're gonna have the greatest shadow, but it's moving and pretty consistently throughout the day. So while this does look somewhat exaggerated, it will be for short durations and it will continue to rotate through. And then just something that the shadow study doesn't actually consider, the way that they are designing the canopies for the solar on the rooftops of each of these buildings, they are actually going to have what they call diffusers, which will project the natural light down into the adjacent areas surrounding the buildings and into the plazas. And so it will minimize the shadows, but that can't be modeled in this type of shadow study.
Okay, thank you, Kelsey.
You're welcome.
Any comments on that? Okay, we'll see if we can get those back up on the city website.
Make a comment on, excuse me,
yes.
Ms. Chairperson. Can I make a comment on the shadow study?
Go ahead, Mr. Baker.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And thank you for putting that. It hasn't been there. And obviously, just a quick review. I don't know how you can make a statement that the areas that are going to be impacted by the shadows are only going to be a short period of time. For the periods that were being shown on the solstices, you could see that 2nd Avenue going in from noon through the evening is going to have a significant shadow from the buildings. And the big problem with doing the rezoning or assuming what's going to happen is the impacts both for my clients at 84 and 86 2nd Avenue, but on the other areas. And there should be an assessment of the potential shadow impacts if the blocks along 2nd Avenue were not included in the rezoning as was suggested by the planning board. This is the kind of information, and I'm not trying to denigrate the project or go into a question of where it satisfies the need, but those are the details of showing the alternatives and how you have an impact that the environmental impact statement should do. And I am struck by something that I'm afraid I hear a disconnect on, is the mixed use institutional zoning and as the legislation that's being provided has no assurances of the mixed uses amenities that are actually being proposed by this project. Or is there any assurance or requirement whatsoever for affordable housing? So unless the law is changed to specifically mandate that, and if for some reason this project does not come to fruition because of whatever its financial issues are where the phases don't really get developed, things will change. And there's no guarantee that will happen unless you put that in this requirement. Because otherwise, these are just empty promises, unless it's embodied into the law. And thank you for the opportunity for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Can I respond to that, Kathy?
Go ahead, Derek.
Currently, if you drive up 2nd Ave on a sunny day, it's almost impossible to see. You know, we have been lucky that we haven't had car accidents there because of the sun. If you go up there I drive up that street all the time for leisure and work. When you're driving up by the church right there, the red light, the blur from the sun is dangerous in itself in its natural state right now. So I just want to point that out.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to follow
JR,
up.
go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on something that was just stated, just so for as council. One thing is, I'm not sure we can put in our zoning a contingency in the zoning map. That would be almost considered spot zoning. I've never seen something like that. I believe that is something that is done at the phase 2 level when the conditional use permits are actually applied for and the building permits are applied for. I don't think it's at this level. The second thing is too, with the shadow study, I believe from the planning board meeting, and Stephanie jump in at this, I believe they've reduced the height of the buildings. And I think the shadow study took into consideration the tallest build out, and then it was reduced to minimize the shadowing?
Correct. The 2nd Avenue building was reduced to reduce that shadow.
Okay, thank you. Or unless there's any other comments, we'll move forward. JR.
Okay. The next standard, this is the last standard that is usually for the zoning text, but we have two more standards after this. Would avoid significant adverse impacts on the natural environment, including but not limited to water, air, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, vegetation, wetlands, and the natural functioning of the environment. This is kind of a little bit with SEQRA, but just to really hit the points and as the planning board has directed, again, the emphasis on the triple net zero, there wouldn't be an impact on that. The storm management portion, as you guys have seen in the review from the stormwater, which is something that I pushed the developers to send me when they proposed the zero waste portion of how it would work and how that actually made a benefit to the rest of the area, because it would actually take out a lot of the stormwater in the area and actually pull it into the development. The use of the triple pane windows, they're reducing as much as they can on the environment as much as possible, as I provided in writing. My recommendation is that it is sound and acceptable. There was a traffic study done that has been provided, and that the purpose of this project was to, and in just in the development in general, was to reduce as much traffic and encourage electrical use as much as possible, and ride sharing, bike, among other uses, as to afford a green city.
Okay, any comments? All right, I guess we can move on to zoning map amendment additional standards there, JR.
Yes, so the additional standards is compatible with existing and proposed uses surrounding the subject land and is the appropriate zoning district for the land. The existing zones as currently in this project in the area are R-1M, single family medium density, RT townhome, and mixed use neighborhood edge, which is a moderate density with limited mixed use and opportunities for live work environment. The side-by-side comparison of the permitted uses already exists on a little under half of the properties, and the proposed MUCI zone show very similar requirements. For any uses that have more impacts on the adjacent area, they provide for control, and that they would go for a conditional use permit to allow the city to look into the uses on a case-by-case basis. For example, the supermarket would absolutely have to go for a case-by-case for a conditional use permit and its own SEQRA determination as well by the planning board. The project will have the most direct impact on the Elijah Missionary Baptist Church during phase 2 of the construction. There are only 3 properties within the 2-block area that are not under direct ownership of the South End development. Let's see, the reflects a modified scale of, they've revised, excuse me, they've revised their plan to take into consideration if those parties do sell or do not sell. And that there will not be direct impacts by the construction process, as there have been mitigation and development plans, as in the full environmental assessment plan, that have taken into consideration to reduce as much impact into the livelihood by using the modular construction style, and given the proximity to the highway, to reduce traffic during the development portion as well. So my recommendation was sound and acceptable. I further went into the issue of spot zoning, and that spot zoning is defined as a impersonal process of singling out one parcel of land for use classification totally different from that of the surrounding area for the benefit of the owner of such property and at the detriment of the other owners. Spot zoning is the antithesis of plan zoning. Fundamentally, if a zoning amendment is consistent with the municipality's comprehensive plan, it is considered by the courts not spot zoning. A zoning amendment will be upheld if it is established that it was adopted for a legitimate government purpose and that there is a reasonable relation between the end sought to be achieved by the amendment and the means used to achieve that end. In order for it to be valid, an amendment to a zoning ordinance must be calculated to the benefit of the community as a whole, as opposed to individual owners. Zoning actions are intended to either favor particular owners or disfavor them, sometimes called reverse spot zoning, rather than to serve the interests of the general welfare, are equally invidious. So in terms of the spot zoning portion, the development allows for community-wide benefit that serve the interests of the general welfare, such as bringing development to the South End that has generally been underserved and underdeveloped, bringing neighborhood services that are not actually available in the South End area, providing educational opportunities, religious and community center, fitness center, quality affordable housing, job creation, among other things. The community benefits go further just than the rezoned area, but the entire South End neighborhood. So my recommendation was sound and acceptable.
Comments by council members? Okay, let's move to the last.
I believe Jakeem has his hand up.
Oh, I apologize. Jakeem, go ahead.
I'm gonna just save it for. I just let you know. I want to speak before you guys do your vote.
Okay. Well, all right. Go ahead, JR.
Well, not before, but after JR is done.
Well, I'm not sure we're gonna have a vote tonight, but we'll see. JR, go ahead.
So the last one is would result in development that is adequately served by public facilities. For example, streets, potable water, sewage, stormwater management, solid waste collection and disposal, school, parks, police, and fire and emergency facilities. They have made several arguments, and I said the recommendation was acceptable. The rezone is uniquely located in close proximity to essential public and community facilities, including the South Police Station, which is about a half mile away, about 0.6 of a mile from the South End Fire Department. 1.5 miles from Albany Medical Center, directly adjacent to Albany Community Charter Center, directly adjacent to Krank Park and American Little League. And they will also enhance the existing facilities, including a partnership with the neighborhood stakeholders for improvement and management of Krank Park. The property is also accessible by public transit, including CDTA bus route 7, 6, and 7. And then as the CDTA has announced recently that they will be doing a new river corridor bus rapid transit line along 2nd Avenue, which will provide 10-minute stop intervals. And with that being said, while it is close proximity to existing public and essential public and community facilities, it also is bringing additional essential public and community facilities.
Okay, thanks, JR. Any comments?
I just got a fast question.
Tom?
Yeah, with the project, because when I heard about public and stuff, As we all know, with the COVID, a lot of our kids now have to do classes online. I'm just wondering, you know, I should have brought this question up sooner, but will there be provisions for internet to these apartments?
Joaquin, do you want
Stephanie?
to handle that?
Yeah, so our every unit will be fully included with cable and internet and Wi-Fi access in all the areas surrounding the amenity spaces as well as the property. We're looking to invest in a lighting system that also provides Wi-Fi system for the property surrounding the property as well.
Okay. So how do we move forward here? I'm of the opinion, and I'm interested in what other committee members feel. I would like to take some more time to review a lot of the information that we received tonight. You know, it's an awesome project. It's really terrific. But this is a major project, and it would be a major zone change. And I think it warrants, you know, us to give some time to review some of the concerns that were raised tonight, and you know, just take a closer look. So I'd be interested to hear what other committee members think about that. Judy? And then we could come back and, I'm sorry, am I muted? No. And then we can come back and ask additional questions if we have them.
Yeah, so two things that I note is the Common Council's decision per our USDO shall clearly state the factors considered in making its decision as well as the basis or rationale for the decision. And also, I'm not quite sure what was meant by this. And I think it would be helpful for somebody to, Kathy, probably you, to address what the planning board meant by having there be a clear articulation should be made of the unique circumstances that make this site location and rezoning appropriate as distinguished from other sites that may exhibit features and conditions. So I think we do need to accompany our decision. You know, you can recall last week I did a major amendment to the resolution on the rezoning in Joyce Love's district, covering these criteria in that because of this requirement that we state the factors considered in making our decision. And now we have this other requirement or recommendation that we clearly articulate the basis for this rezoning to distinguish it from other similarly situated properties, which kind of gets to my whole point of, have we made arguments that essentially could be made for virtually any place in the South End or maybe Arbor Hill or West Hill for a similar sized project and rezoning other areas such as further along 2nd Avenue. In any case, I think the committee could vote this out without, you know, contingent upon somebody putting together this rationale. But I think that it is somewhat the responsibility of the committee to have that. And whether that is part of the resolution or part of the memo in support of this resolution or some other document making our findings, a decision of the committee or the council. I think we need to do something along those lines.
Okay.
So I think that kind of, you could do it contingent upon you could approve it contingent upon somebody, but since you're saying, you'd like some more time, well, maybe somebody ought to be drafting that, and that further helps solidify people's thinking on how this complies with.
Well, I'm happy to work on something like that, and it would be another way to gather some input from other committee members on this issue. Any other committee members want to respond? Or have
Yes.
Tom?
Hello? Yeah, you know, I'm looking on my iPhone now and I don't have the chat box, but when I was at home, there was a lot of people asking questions on chat. Will we, you know, and again, you know, I'm in favor of this project, but I am concerned. I don't want people thinking that we ignored them when they wrote stuff on chat. And I don't know whether, you know, will we be dealing with that chat box at all?
Well, I think that, again, if we take a little more time on this, that will enable people to, you know, review what people have said on chat as well, you know, and all the issues raised today. And chat would be included in that, I would think.
The chat is from Jeff Baker's clients. He and I are in communication as of maybe 4 o'clock this afternoon. So I'm happy to respond to all of those questions for him. They would be a very easy conversation when he's available to do so.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Joyce?
If I may, that's fine, but I think the point is the comments are supposed to be dealt with in public and addressed with the council, and I think
those comments can't be addressed with the council because they're not council questions.
You know, if we do
I've been reading the chats. They're not council questions.
Thank you, Corey.
I'm sorry, I just respectfully disagree. They go to the questions of your environmental impact statement and a lot of the assumptions that are going into this.
There's no assumption. Okay. The planning department has
now
recommendations.
Thank you. This does, excuse me, this does convince me even more that we do need more time to review all this information, be able to converse back and forth, you know, and have another meeting and raise any additional questions that we may have, and then make a decision. Joyce, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I just, how many meetings have we had about this so far?
Well, we've
probably.
It's a very big project.
I was there. I know I've got all the stuff from the last meeting. I just asked a question. How many times have we already met about this particular project right here?
Well, we had the site visit, and then we had at least one other meeting, correct?
We met on the 9th of July. We met on the 16th of July. We met on the 13th of
I thought so. I mean,
there's been 4 meetings in addition to planning board meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Correct that. Say that again, JR.
There's been 4 meetings of our committee in addition to several other planning board meetings.
Including this meeting, you're saying?
Including this meeting. And how much more time are you looking at, Kathy, to discuss the project further? And
just, I personally would like to review the meeting that we had tonight, which is easy to do now that it's all videotaped, and then, you know, get a meeting as soon as possible, because I know that the applicants are under some time constraints.
And what is that, Joaquin?
Yeah, so the time constraint is having the legal authority to build the kind of a project that we're submitting before the end of the year. And realistically, the sooner we have the legal authority to build said project that we're presenting to the planning board, the better it is for us and the community. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any opposition to anybody else on the committee wish to make a comment?
Sonia? Is Sonia on the committee?
No, no.
But Sonia,
Sonia is the sponsor.
Okay. Sonia,
I would like to.
So from my perspective, I feel like we've had a number of meetings on this project for the Common Council, And if we were to pull it out of committee and bring it to the Common Council for a vote, that's not saying yes or no to the project. It's purely moving along the process. And we would have time in between pulling it out of committee now to when the council meets to review said materials that are in question.
Okay, I appreciate your input.
We have to schedule a public hearing for this as well.
Right, and we should be doing that now anyway. Get that, so Michelle, could you, that would be Kashana, just go ahead and schedule the public hearing.
I was already one scheduled for September 7th.
Okay. September 7th. Good.
Well, the most we could schedule is for September 21st because there's a delay. There's a 10-day notice that we have to do for a public hearing. We couldn't do this for September 10th, and we would have to submit it to we have to submit it because of the zoning map. We have to do it within 250 feet of the entire area. So there's time to process it. We wouldn't be able to make it for the September 10th meeting, but the 21st is the one we could do next.
Okay, great. So if we could move forward on that, would that be you, Kashana, or Michelle? Michelle, can you?
But I will forward that email to Danielle.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, jeez.
Go on,
Go
Tom.
ahead.
You can go on, Tom. I can wait.
Sure, real fast. I wanted to ask Kathy, could we move this out of committee tonight so we can do this and put in the contingencies that we just need to verify? You know, I don't know if we're allowed to do that or not, but I'd like to move it forward because, you know, we're talking now, you know, the end of September, and if they need to get this stuff in by the end of the year, I mean, I think there's some minor stuff that we need to look at. So is there a way we can do that, JR? Like just move it out, you know, with a positive recommendation, contingent?
And I second that. I second that. I was
You
going to
can
say
move it
that.
with the recommendation.
Yes.
It doesn't stop it here. We can still do further review as a council as a whole. We still have the public hearing that we are required by law to have prior to any adoption of it.
No,
Okay, well,
I mean, I would like to meet again on it. Judy, do you have any thoughts?
I know I was
Yeah, I do think Derek was trying to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, Derek.
I just want to say once again, because I'm sitting here and I'm just watching and I'm listening, right? And when you go home and you look at it, you'll understand why I keep interjecting, because it's I'm hearing you and Judy's personal opinion about it, and you're saying that you want to hold it up again. You know, I've been watching you, and I would have to say that this is probably the most unprepared that I've seen you deal with something.
Absolutely.
You know, and this is so important
Absolutely.
to our community. And it's hard for me not to interrupt and not to get loud, because it's like it's getting slowed up for no apparent reason, and and it's for personal opinions, and when you have it bordering on the first and the second ward, and you have both council people supporting this project, I don't understand why we are not moving this forward tonight.
Well,
Kathy,
Judy, go ahead.
So what I was going to say before Derek spoke is I would be okay moving this forward without recommendation of the committee at this point, and directing staff and Ms. Fredericks to draft the required statements that address the planning board's recommendations as well as the findings that the USDO requires us to make before it be brought to a vote in the Common Council. So that would be my recommendation at this point. I am, Derek, you say personal opinion, but I am bothered. I am bothered by how much things have changed in my world as a lawyer in terms of people having problems with people who are looking to the law and the standards that are adopted in the law. I feel like as a public official, I have an obligation to obey the law and make reasonable decisions with regard to the standards that I'm directed to. I have a problem with the fact that in our city, there are decisions that have been made that are inconsistent with the law, with people, simply wanting to get to yes because of a particular development. And I think some of this points to, the need to have further dialogue and have actual discussions about changes to the USDO overall that we should be having. And that doesn't mean I'm going to vote no on this particular project, but I do have reasonable and legitimate concerns about it actually meeting the standards that are put forth in the code in order to approve this zoning change. And those standards are there to protect everyone. Sometimes it may be to, protect you or me from a development that we would not necessarily want to see, as well as allow developments that we do want to see. And if it's not providing the foundation for us to approve things that we do want to see, then we ought to be looking at those standards and making those changes to those standards.
All right, Judy, thank you.
I would like to make
Go ahead, make the motion.
I had made a motion. Whoa.
And I
made
second
a motion,
it.
and it was seconded by Joyce.
I did not hear that, Tom. I did not hear it in the form of a motion, and I did not see the second.
I did. Well, JR was there, and people heard it. I mean, I really feel being shut out right now, and I'm really insulted. I'm a council member. I made a motion. I said, can I make a motion? Then I said, I make it, and Joyce seconded it. So let's have the vote.
Well, hold on a second. No reason to be insulted. I just didn't hear it. I'm just. But if other people say it happened, I believe it happened. Okay, Joyce. Any discussion on the motion? I personally, obviously I wanted to meet again.
We still can meet again.
Excuse
me.
Joyce, hold on. Let me speak. I wanted to meet again. No one else seems to feel like there's a need to do that as a committee on this. Judy has proposed moving it out with no recommendation. I'm a little more comfortable with that than a positive recommendation because, like I said, I personally would like to review all this information. So that's my thoughts on it. So, Michelle, go ahead. You're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say for the record that this meeting was made available to the public. It is live streamed like all of our meetings. It's been noticed the same way on the website, to our listserv, and also provide an opportunity to provide public comment. All the public comments were sent to the members. Also, I just wanted to ask which legislation would be this motion, because there's an ordinance and also a resolution. So I'm just trying to be clear.
Well, this is the ordinance.
This is the ordinance? Okay,
yep.
Thank you very much.
Because we haven't talked about the resolution. JR, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to be clear as how we're going, because I know Councilwoman Duche had said something about the standards of review. I just want to make sure how are we going to proceed in terms of how those standards are, because in the last ordinance, when she moved it out, all she did is went down the line saying this, and I mean, I provided a memo. I don't know if you guys want something more in writing. Just want to understand how we're moving procedure to address the standards that are required.
Okay. I mean, we have your memo, so that's helpful. And I know, Judy, you had made a suggestion that, who was it, Sonia needs to respond to. You want to articulate that again, what your comments were there?
Well, we're required to make findings. So, and we haven't done that. There's no document that does that.
But your suggestion was that Sonia and
Well, it could be Sonia work, you know, there's a lot of options for how we could meet that requirement. It could be via making changes to the supporting memorandum that makes the findings. It could be via a separate document that we reference in the resolution. So, you know, and the fact is, we don't have a document, you know, that does that at this point.
That's where I'm a little confused.
So are you suggesting that the findings should include some of the concerns that were raised as well?
Our attorney presented a memo of the project. I'm confused on what more do you need? I don't understand. He went point by point how this project lines up with what is called to be on this project. I don't understand. So what you're saying is the information you got from JR is not sufficient, or it doesn't address point by point what is the standard that needs to be covered for this to be rezoned at what it's being rezoned? Because he went point by point. I don't know what else is needed. I'm trying to figure that out.
You know, I just want to point out to everybody that this really is, you know, we've had just a couple of other zone changes, and we are trying to work through this process because it is, you know, we've only done it a couple of times since we passed the USDO. So if I apologize, and if people could be patient with us as we figure out what the best procedure is here. Judy?
So Corey, it's not a matter of what I want. And I get a little bit tired of people saying, what do I want? I'm looking at the code. The code says, the Common Council shall clearly state the factors considered in making its decision, as well as the basis or rationale. I have proposed a couple different ways in which that might be done. I basically raised that as, this is something that we're required to do. We're having the discussion now about what do we do. I'm sorry that I've raised it. It's in the law.
Okay, you know what I would like to suggest is, JR, if you could take your memo and look at that memo and you know, keeping in mind what is being required of us here, and if you need to reformat it, add, subtract, that would be helpful. Yes?
That's just where I'm a little confused, because with the prior zoning map ordinance that passed, this wasn't required, so I'm a little confused. Well,
okay, so maybe we're deciding now that that's something.
Do you want to merge my memo with the ordinance?
Okay, so wait just a moment. I did spell out the factors considered in making its decision when I amended that resolution or that ordinance, passing that out of committee. I stated the factors and the basis or rationale for the decision. That was a kind of easy thing because we had just discussed it. It was very straightforward. We weren't changing that property to anything other than what the property next door to it was zoned as. It was completely compatible with, you know, the whole zoning theme, you know, in other uses in the area. So I don't know why you're saying we didn't do that. I mean, you know, maybe I haven't seen, you know, what was done up in terms of what it was that I said, but we did do that. And okay. I'm not saying.
I'm going to make a suggestion here. I will work with JR in coming up with an answer to this requirement of the council, okay? And so that we can move on here. Now, there's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. There's been discussion. I think we're going to take a vote unless anyone else has another comment. All right.
Sonia has her hand up.
I'm sorry, who?
Sonia.
Sonia.
So Kathy, to your point, I know Judy was referencing me helping in some capacity. Whatever's needed on my side, loop me into the discussion with you and JR, please.
All right, absolutely, thank you. So I'm going to vote all in favor of the positive recommendation. Okay, and against the positive recommendation. And Judy, did you vote at all, or what's your?
No, I'm not voting at this time because we haven't stated the factors that we considered in making our decision. And so I don't know on what basis, what the council decision is then. And
so the vote has been made, so let's move on.
So you're well, you have to have a quorum.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. So JR, that the vote does not pass, right? Because you need to have a vote of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna just, there's not gonna be a vote tonight. Judy?
Kathy,
go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to move this out of committee without a recommendation, but contingent upon the sponsor, you and JR, working on making findings with regard to this project as we are required to do.
All right, I will second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And now we need to move on to the resolution. And that is resolution 728120R regarding the SEQRA, State Environmental Quality Review Act, for this ordinance. JR, you did take a look at, you drafted the SEQRA recommendation. Could you speak to that, please?
Yes, so as provided under SEQRA under 6 NYCRR 617.7 parentheses C, this is, we have a required to do an analysis of the SEQRA amendments. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 things we need to consider. One being a substantial adverse change in existing air quality, ground surface water quality or quantity, traffic or noise level, a substantial increase in solid waste production, a substantial increase in potential for erosion, flooding, leaching, or drainage problems. 2, the removal or destruction of large quantities of vegetation or fauna, substantial interference with the movement of any resident or migratory fish or wildlife species, impact on a significant habitat area, substantial adverse impacts on a SEQRA as effective of January 1st, 2019. The impairments of the environmental characteristics of a critical environmental area as designated pursuant to section 617.14G. 4, the creation of a material conflict with a community current plan or goal as officially approved or adopted. 5, the impairment of the character or quality or important historical, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources or of existing community or neighborhood character. A major change in the use of either the quantity of or type of energy. The creation of a hazard to human health. A substantial change in the use or intensity of use of land, including agricultural, open space, or recreational resources, or in its capacity to support existing usage. The encouraging or attracting a large number of people to a place or places for more than a few days compared to the number of people who would come to such place absent the action. 10, the creation of a material demand for other actions that would result in one or the above consequences. 11, changes in 2 or more elements of the environment, no one of which has a significant impact on the environment, but when considered together result in a substantial adverse impact on the environment. And 12, 2 or more related actions undertaken, funded, or approved by an agency, none of which has or would have a significant impact on the environment, but when considered cumulatively would meet 1 or more of the criteria in this subdivision. I would advise all the members to look at the part 3 and part 4 Part two and part 3 of the SEQRA application that I propose, as it would help in making the determination. Make sure. So the first one on the part 2 is impact on land. And there is subsequent.
JR, are you talking about taking a look at the FEAS form?
Because they're in conjunction, you have to look at both in conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at 1, impact on land, the question asks, is proposed any action may involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of the proposed site? They reference in the part 1 portion of it. I said, yes, it does. And then after that, going through, when you look at the criteria and there's the relevant questions in the part 1 that it refers to, in the analysis I made, that it makes no or small impact or small impact may occur. So this is fine as it is with it, with this. So there's not or small impact may occur, or a mitigating factor has been presented by the developer as to why it's okay, I believe is the answer. SEQRA's a little technical with that.
Right. Any comments on that section? Impact on land.
Kathy?
Judy?
So JR, you commented that you completed the SEQRA form, and that so you did the analysis and not the applicant on this, is that?
So when it comes to part 1 is the application submitted by the applicant. Part 2 and 3 are what are done by the reviewer as required as SEQRA. And it says there on part 3, as it says right there, if the lead agency, part 2 is to be completed by the lead agency. Part 2 is designed to help the lead agency inventory all potential resources that could be affected by a proposed project or action. We recognize that the lead agency's reviewers will not necessarily be environmental professionals, so the questions are designed to walk a reviewer through the assessment process by providing a series of questions that can be answered using the information found in part 1, which is submitted by the applicant. So, and as we are the lead agent, we are the reviewers. And when I say we, I'm talking the Common Council as a whole.
Okay, can we move on to impact on geological features?
Yep, just so I can get back onto that. So part 1 on the air quality ground, like in totality, it said finding of none. So let me go to part 2. So part 2, impact on geological features. In reviewing part 1 and comparing it to what the question is, the proposed action may result in the modification or destruction or inhibit access to any unique or unusual landforms on the site, cliffs, dunes, mineral fossils, caves. My response was a no.
Comments? Okay, go ahead, please.
Impacts on surface water. On part 3, the proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies, streams, river, ponds, or lakes. I said yes. And when I did the review as to looking over part 1, my results resulted no or small impact may occur.
Okay. I don't see any hands. Go ahead, JR.
Number 4, impacts on groundwater. The proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to groundwater or an aquifer. My answer was yes. In reviewing the questions A through G, my answers were no or small impact may occur. When it came to question B, water supply demand from the proposed action may exceed safe or sustainable withdrawal capacity of the local supply. I had to cite the source, which was the August 7, 2020 Combined Sewer Site Off-Site Improvement Report, which is what talks about the net zero solid water waste and the solid waste zero. So my determination was no or small impact may occur.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any hands. Okay, go ahead.
5, impacts on flooding. After a review of the part 1 portion of the full environment assessment evaluation by the applicant, my result was a no.
All right. Go ahead, JR.
So on number 6, impacts on air. The proposed action may include a state regulated air emission source. My result was a no.
Go ahead.
Impacts on plants and animals. The proposed action may result in a loss of flora or fauna. My determination was no.
Okay, move forward, thanks.
Just make sure. 8, impacts on agricultural resources. The proposed action may impact agricultural resources. Upon my review, my determination was a no.
Okay, keep going.
Number 9, impacts on aesthetic resources. The land use of the proposed action are obviously different from or are in sharp contrast to current land use patterns between the proposed project and a scenic or aesthetic resources. My answer was yes, but when you go through questions A, B, C, D, E, F, my answer was no, or a small impact may occur.
Kathy?
Yes, Judy, go ahead.
I couldn't get the raise hand thing going quick enough. For a substantial change in the use or intensity of use of the land, I think this is a substantial change in the use or intensity of use of this land.
That's the
I had a question about that as well. JR, can you
yes,
talk
under
a little bit
SEQRA,
about
there's
that?
a very specific determination when you're making from the different sharp contrast to use current land use patterns between the proposed. There's a very specific action with it. So that's why questions A through F are you have to go through each one. So when you go through A, 9A, proposed action may be visible from any officially designated federal, state, or local scenic or aesthetic resources. My answer through that, and it's in part E, in E3H of part 1. And when you look at it, the answer is no. B, the proposed action may result in the obstruction, elimination, or significant screening of one or more officially designated scenic views. When you go onto the DEC website, they're talking about mountains, foliage, hiking areas. This project is nowhere near that, so my determination was no. Under C, the proposed action may be visible from publicly accessible vantage points seasonally year-round. Again, the DEC website refers to for example, state parks, particularly state parks or federal parks, or and there's a whole analysis questionnaire. And when I did that, my response was no or small impact. And then the situation or activity in which views are engaged while viewing the proposed action is routine travel by residents, including travel to and from work. No or a small impact may occur was my determination. Recreation or tourism based on activities, mine was no or small impact may occur. And then the proposed action may cause a diminishment of the public enjoyment and appreciation of the designated aesthetic resources. Again, you're looking at parks, mountains, like for example, the Adirondacks, if we were close, like right there. That's one way, that's how the DEC website refers to it. And that's where I came with no. And then there are similar projects visible from the following distance of the proposed project. And when you go through it, when you go through the analysis, the answer is no or small impact.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Okay, Jer, go ahead.
Thank you. So then 10, impact on historic or archaeological resources. The proposed action may occur in or adjacent to a historic or archaeological resource. Upon review of the applicant's paperwork, the answer was no.
Okay, go ahead.
11 was impact on open space and recreation. The proposed action may result in a loss of recreational opportunities or a reduction of an open space resource as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. My answer was no.
Okay, go ahead.
12, the impact on critical environmental areas. The proposed action may be located with or adjacent to a critical environmental area, a CEA. Upon review of the application and of the reports, the answer was a no. My answer was no.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Impact on transportation. The proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation systems. My answer was yes. A, projected traffic increase may exceed a capacity of existing road networks. My answer to that one was no or small impact may occur. B, the proposed action may result in the construction of paved parking area for 500 or more vehicles. My answer was no or small impact. C, the proposed action will degrade existing transit access. My answer was no or small impact may occur. D, the proposed action will degrade existing pedestrian or bicycle accommodations. Upon review, the answer was no or small impact may occur. And then E, the proposed action may alter the present pattern of movement or people or goods. My answer was no or small impact may occur.
Any comments on that? Okay, go ahead.
So impacts on energy. The proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. My answer was yes. A, the proposed action will require a new or upgraded to an existing substation. Upon review of the application and reports, the answer was no or small impact may occur. B, the proposed action will require the creation or extension of an energy transmission or supply system to serve more than 50 single or two-family residents or to serve a commercial industry use. The answer was no or small impact may occur. C, the proposed action may use more than 2,500 megawatt hours per year of electricity. My answer was moderate to a large impact may occur. And then you will see in my memo, I address this a little bit and I say that there is, and as we're supposed to do in part 3, there's mitigating factors for that. D, the proposed action may involve heating or cooling of more than 100 square feet of building area when completed. My answer was moderate to large impact may occur. And as the applicant has produced, there are mitigating factors for that though.
Okay, go ahead.
15, impacts on noise, odor, and light. The proposed action may result in an increase in noise, odors, or outdoor light. My answer was yes, and in continuation, A, the proposed action may produce sound above noise levels established by local regulation. My answer was no or small impact may occur. B, the proposed action may result in blasting within 1,500 feet of any residence, hospital, school, licensed daycare center, or nursing home. My answer was no or small impact may occur. C, the proposed action may result in routine orders for more than 1 hour per day. My answer was no or small impact may occur. D, the proposed action may result in light shining onto adjoining properties. Interestingly, the DEC website, I was a little confused by this. I thought I was understanding that this was going to be about shadowing, but it kind of was about light sources. And so therefore I said no or small impact may occur. E, the proposed action may result in lighting create sky glow brighter than existing area conditions. My answer to that was no or small impact may occur.
Okay, go ahead.
Impacts on human health. The proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contaminants. My answer was yes. I have to preface what contaminants mean. They're very low standard. The reason why I said yes is in one of the questions, there is a mention of pesticides for shrubbery in general maintenance, but under the DEC that has to be considered. And so I had to put yes. But then you go down the list. A, the proposed action is located within 1,500 feet hospitals of a school, hospital, licensed daycare center, group home, nursing home, or retirement community. Will this have an impact on human health? I said no, or small impact may occur. B, the site of the proposed action is currently undergoing remediation. My answer was no, or small impact may occur. C, there is a completed emergency spill remediation or a completed environmental site remediation or adjacent to the site of the proposed action. My answer was no, or small impact may occur. D, the site of the action is subject to an institutional control limiting the use of the property, e.g. easement or deed restriction. I said no, or small impact may occur. The proposed action may affect, I'm sorry, I'm going back to that. Oh no, I'm sorry. E, the proposed action may affect institutional control measures that were put in place to ensure the site remains protective of the environment and human health. My answer was no, or small impact may occur. F, the proposed action has adequate control measures in place to ensure that future generation treatment and disposal of hazardous waste will be protective of the environment and human health. My answer was no, or small impact may occur. G, the proposed action involves construction or modification of a solid waste management facility. Upon review, my answer was no, or small impact may occur. H, the proposal action may result in the unearthing of solid or hazardous waste. Upon review, my answer was no, or small impact may occur. The proposed action may result in excavation or disturbance within 200 feet of a site under the disposal of solid or hazardous waste. My answer was no, or any impacts or small impacts may occur. I think I skipped one, and I think I did, yes. I, the proposed action may result in an increase in the rate of disposal or processing of solid waste. My answer was no, or small impact may occur. The proposed action may result in excavation. I'm sorry, no, that was the one I went at. I skipped ahead. The proposed action may result in the mitigation of explosive gases from a landfill site to adjacent offsite structures. My answer was no, or small impact may occur. And then I, the proposed action may result in the release of contaminated leachates. I can't pronounce that. My English is not
Leachate? I don't know how you pronounce it.
My English is, according to Celia Cruz, my English is not good looking right now. So my answer to that one was no, or small impact may occur.
Okay.
So 17, if there's nothing on that one, or look like Judy wants to say something.
Judy.
Yeah, I'm curious, do we know how many square feet of development this is? I've been looking for that in the project.
And are you talking about the actual size of the development itself?
Yeah, yeah.
That is in part 1. Give me 1 second.
Kelsey, do you have that figure?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
I threw that document on the floor because I was hoping we were done with it. 48,800 gross square feet. Does that sound right, Kels?
That's the footprint.
Oh.
Of the 4 buildings.
Oh, you're looking for the...
The total gross square footage is 448,000.
That's the number I was looking at.
800 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Shall I continue?
Yep, go ahead, JR.
So 17 is a little interesting. So it's consistency with community plans, but the question is, the proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use plans. It's a double kind of negative kind of a thing. Because when you go into each one, it's a negative inference. So you say no. That's what I put down.
Oh boy.
JR, could you read that criteria again? I didn't follow.
It's interesting. It says the proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use. So to say yes, that means it is inconsistent with land use. Saying no, it's not consistent. It is consistent. Saying no, it is consistent.
But it is not.
It is not consistent.
That's you go into all these, it refers back to the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Stephanie, did you want to add something to that one, I believe?
No, just that it was clear that an English major did not write this criteria because the double negative's annoying.
Well, why don't we just because it's a little confusing, go through each one there.
Okay. So the proposed actions land use components may be different from or in sharp contrast to surrounding land use patterns. Let's see. Honestly, I mean, this would require going back and forth on part one. Yeah, you have to go back and forth in part one to do your analysis, because according to this form, if you say no, you just skip it and go to 18.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Why don't we go to 18 then?
Then 18, again, it's the same, not an English major wrote this one. So consistency with community character. Proposed project is inconsistent with the existing community character. So my answer was no to that one.
So, I mean, this is a substantial change in what is there now. It's an improvement, but it's a substantial change. One of the reason why I asked about the square footage is we've had things like St. Peter's doing a simple hospital expansion of 275,000 square feet. We required the applicant to do a full EIS. Ecom Square was 250,000 square feet. We required, it was actually the planning department and planning board required a full EIS. 100,000 square feet of new office space for Albany Med and a 1,220 car parking garage required a full EIS. The Wellington structure, 416 square feet, mixed use. The renovation of that with no additional parking spaces required a full EIS. So I'm a little confused about us not requiring this applicant, considering the size of this project, to do the full environmental impact statement requirements of the SEQRA Act.
There's no requirement within SEQRA that ties anything to square footage except for determination of whether it's a type 1 action, a type 2, or an unlisted action. That's the only place in the SEQRA statute where there's any significance placed on the square footage. What we're really talking about here, when you say EIS versus a negative declaration, what does the ES require you to do? It requires you to scope, and the purpose of scoping is to determine what the impacts are. And then it asks you to study the impacts. We've already done that, and we actually did that with your planning staff. They were the ones who identified each and every impact that they found within this, and they told us to study that. And so that's when we came up with the list of studies that they required, and then we provided them to you. So we've given you a geotechnical report. We've done both phase 1 and phase 2 of that. We've done a traffic study, and not just a normal traffic study. We've done one that includes parking demand and transportation demand management plan, far in excess of anything I've seen in the past. We've done a shadow study. We've done archaeological phase 1A, phase 1B, and we've done a SWIP. So we worked with your planning department months ago to identify what are the impacts of this project and then studied them. And that's exactly what is required in an EIS. I would ask, which impact you think we haven't studied so that we can do that, because that's the only difference between an EIS and the process we've already been through.
And I will say that one of the things that I saw was that could be an impact was the water because of the stormwater portion. And when I requested that they do a further study on the stormwater, they provided that stormwater combined sewer study.
So if the planning department has done all of this and reviewed all of this, and they are the experts, then why aren't they doing the SEQRA approval?
You guys declared lead agent. You guys declared lead agent.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would like to know why we decided and how that decision was made for us to be lead agent. Because it really is, in my opinion, more appropriate that the planning department should have been lead agent.
Well, the planning department can't be lead agent. They're not an entity like that.
All right, well, the city of Albany.
And I can send an email. Yeah, and I can send an email that where we were discussing that who was doing lead agent, and the planning department did say that common council in this circumstance with the zoning map amendment, as we are the final say, is appropriate to be lead agent.
All right, I'd like to see that, please. Yeah. Because all the discussion that you're talking about had, you know, concerned the planning department, and they're not here tonight, unfortunately. And it would be helpful to have them confirm some of this. So,
excuse me, may I respond to Ms. Ferradino, our last point?
I'm sorry, Mr. Baker. No, the public comment is over.
Okay.
Well, where were we?
That's the final portion of the part 2. So then you step over to part 3 and you make and you put in the determinations. I put in there the addendum, which is my memo, and would also be the proposed amended resolution that I have produced, where according to all my findings and with the mitigating factors by the developer has produced for all this, including the triple net zero, among other things with all the studies, there was no finding of an environmental impact, and therefore I determined that they would be entitled to a negative declaration.
Okay, thank you. Any comments by council members? Committee members, I'm sorry, first. Any comments by other council members? Does anyone want to put a motion on the table? Any comments?
Well, Kathy, this okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I got kicked off, so I couldn't get back in, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I didn't know. Do you want me to make a motion, Kathy, we pass this the resolution out with a positive? I mean, I'll be glad to do it. But obviously, we won't have 3 with Joyce. I think Joyce is gone.
Oh, is
so
she?
Unless you and Judy are going to do it, I mean, it'd be kind of, that's why I was quiet for a minute or 2.
I see. Judy, do you have any thoughts on this?
Personally, I don't really feel equipped to do a SEQRA analysis on this. And, you know, I think it's rather complicated. And, you know, again, there are other projects. I mean, there's, you know, going back, you know, 10, 15 years, we just haven't had that many projects of this size. When we have, the city has required the full environmental impact statement. And I know that this is like a really sensitive area that, you know, I guess what I'd like is actually to have somebody from the planning department come and concur with JR's assessment. I'm just really struggling.
Yeah, and SEQRA is an involved and complicated process, and I would, I hear what you're saying, Stephanie, but I think that we have a responsibility to make sure we're hearing from all sides here. And so I agree with that. And I would suggest that we set up another meeting, and in the meantime, have some conversations with planning and invite them to our next meeting and see if we can get any of these concerns resolved.
JR, could I ask a question? JR, did we invite planning to this session?
Yes.
And what was their response?
I was aware that Amy was going to make it, and then I think she went on vacation. That's all I know.
And what is their initial response to environmental impact?
They really haven't given me anything. They kind of just left it to myself.
Okay.
So I think that's what we'll do, is plan another meeting. And
the only issue we run into is that because this and the ordinance that we have that just moved out of committee, we can't schedule a public hearing without this too. So we would have to schedule a public hearing for this too, but we can't, I don't.
Well, for the resolution?
Yeah, because you have to do SEQRA and the zoning map amendment. It's a dual. You have to do it together. You can't separate them.
Okay,
that's a state law requirement.
So can we look at the calendar and try to come up with? You can't have the public hearing till the second meeting in September anyway, right?
Right, but generally our purposes has been that we don't usually schedule until the resolution or the ordinance has been out of committee. That's been the practice that I've seen since I've been part of the council.
Well, I think since we've already approved since we've already moved the ordinance out, perhaps we can, in this case, we can go ahead and do that.
Yep.
I do want to note that Richard has commented that it used to be that the Common Council would hold a public hearing prior to committee action in order to get that public input to inform the committee's decision. So
we usually generally don't do that until after the planning board comes with the recommendation, which was very recent. So, and I've been told differently we have to wait till committee action first. That's what I've been instructed.
Well, I think in this case, we can go ahead and schedule it and try to come up with a date for another committee meeting. So how soon can we do that?
I will be looking to you, Kathy, to send me some dates for the next one, and then I'll reach out to planning.
Okay, so
what about if we move this without a recommendation, to just move it out of the committee, and then we still keep going further because we'll be referring it back to the Common Council, because in the end, to make all these determinations is the Common Council as a whole. It's not just the committee that makes the determination. That's the thing.
You can have planning come to caucus, a 5:30 caucus, if that works.
And nothing stops the committee from actually meeting. It's just the scheduling of the public hearing, and we can still keep meeting on it if that's so desired.
Let's just schedule another committee meeting on this.
Okay.
We'll have planning there. Okay. So we'll come up with some other dates.
I would like either Brad or Chris and Amy to be at that meeting.
Yeah, we'll request that. Okay, can we make a motion to adjourn for tonight?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Second.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.